India is now facing a crisis that could change daily life for millions of people. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has asked Indians to work from home again, reduce foreign travel, avoid unnecessary fuel use, and even buy less gold as the war involving Iran continues to shake global energy markets. The message sounded almost like a return to the COVID era. But this time, the threat is not a virus. It is oil. And at the center of this crisis is the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important energy routes, which has remained blocked for more than 2.5 months due to the ongoing conflict linked to Israel and the United States. For a country like India, which imports nearly 90% of its oil, this is becoming a serious economic emergency. Fuel prices around the world are rising rapidly. Currencies are under pressure, industries are slowing down, and governments are scrambling for solutions. But what made Modi's speech so dramatic was not just the warning itself. It was the fact that the Indian Prime Minister openly told 1.4 billion people that patriotism now means changing how they live every day. Carpool instead of driving alone. Use public transport. Avoid luxury spending. Save fuel. Save foreign exchange. The message was clear. India believes the crisis may last much longer than expected, and the country is preparing for a period of economic strain that could affect nearly every household. The biggest problem for India is simple. Modern economies run on energy, and India depends heavily on imported oil to keep its economy moving. Factories, transport systems, farming, airlines, shipping, electricity generation, all of them depend on fuel. Normally, millions of barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz every day from Gulf producers into Asian markets. But the continuing conflict has disrupted those flows, creating one of the worst global energy shocks in modern history. The International Energy Agency has reportedly described the situation as the largest supply disruption in history. That has created panic across global markets. Oil prices surged, shipping insurance costs exploded, freight became more expensive, and countries across Asia suddenly found themselves vulnerable. India has been hit especially hard because its fast-growing economy consumes enormous amounts of imported crude oil every single day. The government has so far avoided sharply increasing petrol and diesel prices for ordinary consumers, but the pressure is building rapidly behind the scenes. State-owned fuel companies are facing losses. The Indian rupee has weakened to record lows against the dollar. Inflation fears are growing, and investors are becoming nervous about how long the disruption could continue. That nervousness became visible almost immediately after Modi's speech. India's Sensex stock index reportedly dropped more than 1,000 points during early trading, partly because markets interpreted the Prime Minister's warning as a sign that the government expects prolonged economic disruption ahead. When governments start publicly asking citizens to reduce fuel consumption, investors understand one thing very clearly: the situation is serious. The effects are already spreading across India's economy in ways ordinary people can feel. Industries that rely heavily on energy are under pressure. Factories producing glass, plastic products, and tiles are reportedly facing rising operational costs, putting hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk. Farmers are worried about fertilizer shortages because fertilizer production itself depends heavily on energy supplies. Modi even asked farmers to cut fertilizer use by half in order to manage shortages and reduce costs. If agricultural production slows down, food prices could rise sharply across the country. Transportation costs are also increasing, affecting everything from groceries to airline tickets. For young middle-class Indians who were already dealing with expensive housing and rising living costs, this creates another layer of economic anxiety. Working from home may reduce commuting expenses, but it also signals that the government wants to conserve fuel on a national level. Meanwhile, the appeal to reduce foreign travel and buy less gold reflects another major concern: foreign exchange reserves. India spends huge amounts of dollars importing oil, and when energy prices surge, pressure on the country's reserves increases. Gold imports also consume foreign currency. Modi's message was therefore not only about saving fuel, it was about protecting India's financial stability during a global crisis. Opposition leaders quickly attacked the government, accusing it of shifting responsibility onto ordinary citizens, instead of admitting policy failures. Rahul Gandhi criticized Modi's remarks by saying these were not sermons, but proofs of failure. Critics argue the government should have prepared better for global energy shocks, instead of asking people to change their lifestyles. But supporters of Modi argue that no government could fully control a crisis of this scale, especially when global energy routes themselves are disrupted by war. What makes this situation even more important is that India is not alone. Countries across Asia and beyond are now taking emergency steps to deal with rising fuel prices and energy shortages. China reportedly ordered refineries to stop fuel exports temporarily in order to protect domestic supplies, while some airlines reduced flights because jet fuel became too expensive. In Australia, several states made public transport free or reduced fares heavily to discourage private car use. The Philippines declared a national emergency, introduced subsidies for transport workers, reduced ferry services, and even shifted some government employees to a 4-day workweek. Sri Lanka, which already experienced a severe economic collapse in recent years, brought back fuel rationing and temporarily shut schools and government offices on certain days to save energy. All of this shows how deeply connected the global economy remains to Middle Eastern energy routes. A conflict thousands of kilometers away can suddenly affect bus fares in Manila, factory jobs in India, or airline routes in China. And the longer the crisis continues, the more pressure governments will face from angry populations struggling with inflation and rising costs. In many ways, this crisis is exposing a reality that modern economies often try to ignore. Despite all the talk about renewable energy and technological progress, oil still sits at the center of global economic stability. When oil flows are disrupted, the entire system begins shaking. For India specifically, this moment could become a major political and economic turning point. Modi's call for sacrifice is not just about surviving a temporary spike in prices. It reflects fears that the global energy environment itself may be entering a more unstable period. If the Strait of Hormuz remains blocked for much longer, India may eventually be forced to take stronger measures, including fuel rationing, higher energy prices, restrictions on consumption, or emergency economic policies. That would test both the resilience of India's economy and the political popularity of Modi's government. At the same time, the crisis may accelerate India's long-term push toward renewable energy, electric transport, domestic manufacturing, and reduced dependence on imported oil. But those transitions take years, not months. Right now, India remains deeply vulnerable to global energy shocks. And perhaps the most striking part of this story is how quickly geopolitics can reshape ordinary life. A war in the Middle East is now influencing whether an office worker in Mumbai commutes daily, whether a farmer in Punjab can afford fertilizer, whether a student can travel abroad, or whether a family decides to buy gold for a wedding. That is the reality of globalization in 2026. Countries may appear independent, but energy connects everything. And as this crisis grows, India is now trying to convince its people that economic discipline itself has become a form of national service.